We were just finishing up number 4 on the bottom of page 12 of your 7-3 notes. So we were talking about how this is an extraneous solution because a square root can never equal negative. And I was just getting ready to tell you to write these two things at the bottom to show you why. When you take the square root of a negative, you get positive 6i. When you take the square root of a positive, you get positive, in this case, 6. There's no way a square root can come out with a negative answer. So that's how we know to cross it out. So then that leaves one solution to deal with, and the video stopped and I didn't know it, so I finished the problem, but I'll explain it from here. So we had square root x equals 5. And we learned in the last chapter, we want to know what x is. So to undo the square root, you do the opposite, which is raise it to the power of the index, which is 2. And so these cancel out because they undo each other, and we get x equals, square that, 25. So 25 is our only valid solution. And like I said, this problem is on the test. It does have one solution that doesn't check. So this is a really good problem to make sure you go back at and look and make sure you're comfortable with it before you take your test. Okay, let's start number 5 on this paper, and then maybe you want to have another paper handy on the side because I have a feeling we're probably going to have to continue it on a second sheet since we already used half of its space. So just like any other problem, I look at the middle term and I know that's u. So u equals the variable part, x minus 2 over 4. So box that, because we know we're going to have to come back to that later. So now we have, this is the u, and there's a squared. So u squared minus 3u minus 4 equals 0. Finally, they gave us an easy one. Do you see why I'm saying that? Double bubble. No number in front, so we don't have to do all that AC stuff that we did on the last two. So this is nice. Super nice. So we can go straight to the bubbles. No AC needed. Factors of 4 that subtract a 3 would be 1 and 4. Largest one's negative. So positive 1, negative 4, because this means the signs will be different. So u plus 1, u minus 4. And if a times b equals 0, either a is 0 or b is 0. So that leaves us with u equals negative 1 or u equals positive 4. This problem does not have square roots in it, so when we get our two solutions, they're both going to be valid. The only time we have to look for extraneous solutions, remember, is with square roots and fractions that have x's in the denominator, which this doesn't have either. So now we're ready to back substitute. So in place of u, we're going to put x minus 2 over 4. And remember how we learned in chapter 5, if you have a fraction on one side, make a fraction on the other side, because remember how we learned to solve by setting the two cross products equal? So I immediately saw a fraction, so I wrote negative 1 as negative 1 over 1. Then it'll be super easy to solve. So I get x minus 2 with that cross product equals negative 4 with that cross product. Sorry, I should have turned my head away there. So my first solution is x equals negative 2. So add 2, we get negative 2. So this cross product's x minus 2, this cross product's negative 4. You set them equal, and then add 2 to both sides, x equals negative 2. So up here we can put our first solution in, negative 2. Now we have to do the same thing over here. So in place of u, we're going to put x minus 2 over 4 because this says they're the same thing. So x minus 2 over 4 equals 4 over 1. Again, when you see a fraction on one side, go ahead and make the other side a fraction too, so you can cross multiply. So on this side, I get x minus 2 equals 16. Add 2, and we get x equals 18 as our second solution. And we can go up there and put it in solution brackets. And we knew there was going to be 2. Excuse me. We knew there was going to be 2 because this problem's highest power is 2, which means there must be 2 solutions. So -2 and 18 are the 2 solutions. Okay, so let's go ahead and turn to page 13. This one also has a test question on it. I marked it as number 6. Actually, the example problem is just like number 6. So if you wanted to highlight it too, so you had a couple to look at. So this is just like number 9 on your practice test. This one we've already done. We did it in chapter 4. We learned how to factor it. So we did this step in chapter 4. It was actually even on your test. And the only thing we didn't do was solve it. So this one we're actually going to go ahead and solve. We're not just factoring. So we learned that because that's x to the 4th, this is x squared. We can factor it as x squared and x squared. And we're looking for factors of 12 that add to 7, which are 3 and 4. This says the signs are the same. And this says they'll both be negative. So x squared minus 3, x squared minus 4. And you can always check to see that it's correct. Is -3 plus -4 -7? Yes. Is -3 times -4 positive 12? Yes. So x squared minus 3 can't be factored because it's not a difference of squares, but this you learned in chapter 4 is a difference of squares. So then we break it down into x plus 2, x minus 2 equals 0. And then we use a 0 factor property. If a times b times c equals 0, either a is 0 or, let's write this down, x squared minus 3 equals 0, or x plus 2 equals 0, or x minus 2 equals 0. And so when we solve this one, we get x squared equals, add 3 to both sides. Then we square root, and this is from 7.1 that says anytime you square root both sides, you must add a plus or minus. So x equals square root of x squared is x plus or minus. Square root of 3 can't be broke down. You forget that plus or minus, and you're going to end up with 3 solutions. And this problem guarantees me there will be 4 solutions. Whatever the power is, that's how many solutions you should have. So you forget the plus or minus, you're going to think there's only 3 solutions, and that's not possible. A 4th degree equation will have 4 solutions. So when you go to write your solutions, if you only see 3 and you look up there and see 4, you know somewhere you missed a plus or minus. So plus or minus radical 3 are your first 2, negative rad 3, positive rad 3. Then you solve this, subtract 2, you get x equals -2. Then you solve this, add 2, you get x equals 2. So there are your 4 solutions. And it should always match the power. So as you're taking your test, always look back before you submit that answer and go, 4 power, 4 solutions. Check. We're good. Okay, so let's try a couple on our own. So we have x to the 4th minus 11x squared minus 80. So again, same thing. This times 2, that means we can factor it. So we have x squared and x squared. That's really the only difference we learned in chapter 4. Instead of x and x, to get x to the fourth, we need x squared, x squared. Everything else is the same. This says the signs will be different. This says the largest number should be negative. So we're looking for factors of 80 that subtract to 11. So over here we do 80. 1 and 80, that doesn't subtract to 11. 2 and 40, nope. 3 doesn't go into it. 4 and 20, that doesn't subtract to 11, but we're getting closer. 5 goes in 16 times. Boom, there is our subtract to 11. So now we have to put the signs in different, largest one negative. So minus, positive. So then we write x squared plus 5. X squared minus 16. So do either of those factor again? Difference of squares, not this one. So that one comes down as is. And this one turns into x plus 4, x minus 4. And I'm keeping my eye on the prize. I know there has to be 4 solutions. So before I box my final answer, I need to make sure I have all 4 of them. So now if A times B times C equals 0, either A is 0, or B is 0, or C is 0. And that is where I need to get my 4 solutions. So to solve this one, subtract 5 from both sides, and I get x squared equals negative 5. But I don't want to know what x squared is. I want to know what x is. So I square root both sides to undo that x squared. But remember how we learn? Don't forget to immediately add that plus or minus. Otherwise, you're going to be short a solution. Square root of x squared is x. Oh, wow, I just wrote right over this problem. X equals plus or minus. A negative under a square root comes out as I. And square root of 5 can't be broke down, so it stays under the radical. So up here we can start our list of 4 solutions. So negative I rad 5. Positive I rad 5. So there's the first 2, and then subtract 4, x equals negative 4, add 4, x equals 4. So then we have negative 4, positive 4. 4 solutions, and the power of our problem is 4th degree. So everything is good. And that is the one that's most like the one on your test. Okay, so I would turn off my camera if I was you, or turn off the video, and go ahead and do this last one on your own. Make sure you're good, and then turn it back on and check it with mine. So again, we can do double bubble because our leading coefficient's 1. Instead of x to the 4th, we're going to have x squared and x squared. This says the signs are the same. This says they're both negative. Factors of 100 that add to 29 are 4 and 25, which you should have already found because you worked these on your own. And what's different about this one is they both factor. So x plus 2, x minus 2, x plus 5, x minus 5, because they're both a difference of squares. So then we just set all 4 equal to 0 to get our 4 solutions. So you can tell already what they're going to be. Negative 2, positive 2, negative 5, positive 5. And so we get negative 2, positive 2, negative 5, and positive 5 as our 4 solutions. So now you guys are ready to do 7.3 in Connect and number